By the book, that was roughing the passer. By the eye test, most of us saw a textbook sack. Dallas Turner beats his man, wraps Lamar Jackson, and finishes the tackle. The whistle changed a near 53-yard desperation attempt into a 30-yard chip shot at the end of the half, and the Ravens walked into the locker room trailing 10-9 instead of down by a longer margin. That tiny swing of points is why the clip blew up. The rule the refs enforced is explicit. Defenders can't land with all or most of their body weight on a passer or stuff him into the ground. The league trains crews to look not just at the initial contact, but at how a tackle finishes. If a defender's momentum carries him on top of the quarterback and it appears he lands with body weight, that can be a flag, even when the contact started as a clean wrap. Officials call what the rule describes, viewers react to what they see in context. That tension, letter of the rule versus spirit of the play, is the NFL's recurring headache. Safety and optics push the league to protect the passer. Competitive integrity and the natural flow of tackling push back. The practical effect is that defenders are coached to finish to the side or to peel off, but doing that consistently at game speed is hard. The defender's job is to secure the tackle. The rule asks him to moderate how he does it. Under pressure, those two goals collide. There are cleaner ways to reduce the outrage without gutting the protection standard. First, define a measurable finish. Instead of vague language about most of the defender's weight, the league could adopt a quantifiable frame. For example, sustained torso contact exceeding half a second or clear chest-on-chest compression that forces the quarterback's torso downward. Second, allow a limited replay check on end-of-half penalties that materially alter scoring opportunities. A one-time fast replay on those flags would trade a little clock for a lot of legitimacy. Third, train and publish visual standards so crews call like for like across weeks. Consistency beats justification after the fact. None of this removes the reality that collisions are violent and messy. Players will always argue for letting defenders play and for treating QBs like football players, not porcelain. The league will always say protecting health is non-negotiable. The answer won't please everyone. But clarity, consistency, and a narrow replay safety valve would at least close the gap between that looked clean and that's clearly a foul. Tonight's call sat in the gap. Defensible under the book, enraging by instinct. And until the NFL tightens how it measures finish, we'll keep having the same argument. Expectations were high when Aaron Rodgers signed in Pittsburgh. Veteran leadership, a steady hand, and an instant nudge toward contention. For stretches this year, he delivered parts of that promise. Sunday night, though, was the kind of performance that forces reality back into the conversation. Under pressure, short on mobility, and mistake-prone at the worst possible times. Rodgers' stat line, middling completions, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating in the 50s, is ugly enough. The safeties and sacks that turned into a safety themselves told the deeper story. The pocket collapsed repeatedly, timing evaporated, and an offense that leaned on short, high-percentage throws couldn't find traction. At 42, Rodgers still processes the game at a phenomenal level. What an aging elite QB can't reliably provide anymore is the extra scramble, the improvisational escape that turns near sacks into extra yards. That physical limit matters when the offensive line and weapons don't compensate. But this isn't only Aaron Rodgers' problem. The Steelers' roster construction and in-season passivity are part of the equation. You don't sign a Hall of Famer and then leave him exposed behind a line that can't sustain contact. The team did not materially change its receiving core or pass pro at the deadline, and the result was predictable. Rodgers facing pressure he can't always buy time to solve. Coaching and scheme must adapt. Quicker drops, more two-step timing routes, and schematic protections that reduce the need for Rodgers to escape instead of throw. What's the organizational choice now? If Pittsburgh keeps Rodgers because his leadership and game management still elevate the team on better weeks, the front office must immediately prioritize protecting him and adding playmakers who create easy, high-value reads. If the team decides Rodgers is no longer the long-term answer, that pivot needs to be clear and decisive in the offseason, not a mid-season panic. Either path requires honest evaluation. This was a bad night, and the franchise should treat it as diagnostic, not as an outlier to paper over. Finally, give credit where it's due. Rodgers hasn't been a sunk cost. He's renewed the locker room's professionalism. But leadership can't cover a porous line and inconsistent playmakers forever. The Steelers' next moves should be surgical. Shore up protection, inject vertical threat or separation into the receiver room, and scheme to get Rodgers quick, decisive throws. Age is immutable. Roster design is not. If Pittsburgh wants to contend with Rodgers under center, they must build a team that does more of the physical work he used to shoulder. If they keep waiting for magic, Sunday's meltdown will feel less like an isolated bad night and more like a season trend.